Carlos Sainz is arguably one of the best drivers on the current F1 grid, but his career leading up to this point has been somewhat strange. In the 4 teams he's driven at, he's always seemed to be pretty consistent, delivering great results. But there's something about this year's 2022 Ferrari campaign which has made him seem a little bit underwhelming. But he was one of the many few drivers who escaped the Red Bull Driver Academy, and he's now made a name for himself in Formula 1 on his own. So today, let's take a deep dive into the odyssey of Carlos Sainz. Now, Carlos Sainz Jr., yes, his dad is Carlos Sainz Sr., a pretty decent rally driver if you ask some people. Sainz first joined Formula 1 in 2015 to partner Max Verstappen. This is actually probably one of the greatest driver lineups we've had in recent memory, but we just didn't know it yet. Carlos and Max seemed relatively equal throughout the year, except for the fact that Carlos probably had the worst reliability in years. He DNF'd 4 races in a row thanks to Red Bull's reliability issues. Now that is Daniel Ricciardo 2018 Red Bull types of bad luck. So in the standings, Carlos scored 18 points to Max's 49. Now like I said, that's not a true representation of his performance that year. For example, Carlos actually outqualified Max Verstappen. Yes, Carlos Sainz outqualified Max Verstappen. That's pretty impressive if you ask me. In 2016 he stayed at Toro Rosso, but of course in Barcelona, his younger teammate was promoted to the main Red Bull team, and of course he won the 2016 Spanish Grand Prix thanks to this incident. So the rest of the year, Sainz would be up against Daniel Kvyat. Now I don't want to call it an annihilation, but Carlos scored 42 points compared to Daniel's 4. Yes, 4. Not 14 or 40, 4. What? In 2017, Sainz didn't feel like he was going anywhere in that Toro Rosso, and maybe history would repeat itself, the Toro Rosso drivers leaving F1 after about 2 seasons. To try and prevent this, Sainz made the move to Renault mid-season. Now this one simple move probably saved Carlos his entire F1 career. Unlike most other Toro Rosso drivers, he escaped the Red Bull Driver Academy, and has been able to make a name for himself without the backing from the charging bulls. In Renault, he actually beat his more experienced teammate Nico Hülkenberg. Sainz scored 54 points compared to Nico's 43. That's pretty good. Then let's look back at his old team Toro Rosso, and the highest scoring driver, Daniel Kvyat, only scored 5 points that season. Now let's move on to 2018, where he actually did a little bit worse, only scoring 53 points in that Renault, whereas Nico Hülkenberg finished P7 in the standings with 69 points, compared to Carlos finishing P10. Now that we've glossed over his Renault stints, let's look at my favourite driver move that he ever made. Now if you have enjoyed the video this far, please do consider subscribing. It's free, only takes a few seconds, and you can always unsubscribe later if you want. That's the only time I ask. Thanks. Once Fernando Alonso had had enough and Stoffel Vandoorne wasn't performing, McLaren recruited a whole new driver lineup for 2019. They brought their rookie, Lando Norris, and brought him to McLaren, and they brought the somewhat experienced driver in Carlos Sainz, also to McLaren. I could go on and on about how great this driver lineup was. The fact that they had a relatively experienced driver and a promising young talent was perfect. It was the way McLaren recovered from the dark days of finishing pretty much last in the standings, bar one. This is the sort of thing I think most struggling teams should do these days, with the likes of Haas, Williams or Alfa Romeo. We've sort of seen Alfa Romeo starting to do it, with recruiting Zhou Guanyu and Valtteri Bottas. An experienced driver who seems to show results, and then a rookie who's shown some talent. This is what they need to build up. I mean, look at Alfa Romeo this season, they're doing pretty well. So if it works with Alfa Romeo and it worked with McLaren, then surely Haas should do it. And Haas actually have done it. They've got Kevin Magnussen and they've got Mick Schumacher. They just need to find another driver with enough talent who's younger, because Mick Schumacher isn't doing too great, is he? Anyway, back to Carlos and McLaren. The team went from finishing in P9 in 2017 to finishing in P4 in 2019. Best of the rest and top of the midfield. And Carlos definitely carried the McLaren team, finishing P6 in the standings, best of the rest. He also scored the most points he'd ever done in a season, 96. Now comparing that to his rookie teammate Lando Norris, who finished P11 with 49 points. McLaren was on the up, and it looked like if Lando and Carlos stayed together, they could be unstoppable. In 2020, McLaren had their best year in recent memory, as Ferrari was struggling in their midfield. McLaren capitalised on this and finished P3 in the standings. Carlos also equalled his best finish in the standings in P6 and got the most points he'd ever got in any season, 105. And this time his younger teammate Lando Norris was also improving, as he finished P9 in the standings compared to P11 the year before. But before the delayed 2020 season even started, Carlos was recruited by Ferrari to replace the outgoing Sebastian Vettel. And now, of course, Carlos took it. I mean, who wouldn't want to be a Ferrari driver? I'm a McLaren fan and I want to be a Ferrari driver. Now let's move on to 2021. I'll quickly skim over this as it's pretty simple, but Carlos was seriously consistent. He was always there to pick up the pieces and get podiums when one of the 2 top teams was struggling. He also beat his highly regarded teammate in Charles Leclerc, even better than he'd done the year before. Ferrari also finished P3 in the standings this season, beating out McLaren. And of course, the 2022 regulations were coming next year. So Ferrari stopped their production on the 2021 car to move on to 2022. And there was a lot of hype around the Italian team. And how would Carlos do in the new regulations? Let's just say that the start to Carlos's 2022 season was amazing. He finished P2 in Bahrain and P3 in Saudi Arabia. This was an amazing start for the Ferraris and Carlos Sainz, but then his spell of bad luck started. He had back-to-back DNFs in Australia and Imola. In Australia he got caught out in qualifying, and then pushed too hard on cold tyres in the early stages of the race and spun into the gravel trap. In wet Imola, he made a mistake in qualifying again, spun into the gravel, and jeopardised his race. He then was stuck in the midfield and collided with Daniel Ricciardo at turn 1, although saying that in Miami he got P3 and in Spain he got P4. Although considering Charles did have an engine issue and did retire, maybe he could have got a podium, but instead George Russell did. In Monaco he got P2 and seemed like he'd almost get his first victory from Sergio Perez. But it seems when Carlos is in second place he never just has enough pace to overtake the leader. In Baku he suffered from a hydraulic issue and retired, and again in Canada it seems like he just didn't have the pace to overtake Max Verstappen and get his first Formula 1 victory. Although saying that, he's only had 3 DNFs this season, 2 of which was his fault, yes, but still, only 3 is not going to be the end of the world. And I mean, if you look at the results, every time he's finished the race, he's got either P4 or above. That's pretty good. And to be honest, I still see him regularly picking up the pieces and picking up points and podiums for that Ferrari team. I mean, he's been doing it his entire career. And yes, he had 2 bad races, but all drivers have their ups and downs. I see no reason why if Carlos doesn't put his head down and extracts a little bit more performance out of that Ferrari car, that he can't be a championship contender or at least be on pace with Charles Leclerc. Remember, we're talking about a guy who outqualified Max Verstappen in their rookie year. He has got talent, but what do you guys think? Do you think Carlos Sainz will ever win a championship, win a race? Will he always just be a little second driver that no one really cares about? Let me know in the comments below, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Now if you enjoyed this video, be sure to check out this video where I talk about Pierre Gasly and his future in Formula 1. Click it now, you're gonna enjoy it, trust me.